Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. I'd like to welcome you to episode 227 of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. The FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report is sponsored by Advanced Compliance Solutions, your one-stop shop for all things FCPA compliance related. Today I have with me Jack Kelly. Jack is the head of the Compliance Search Group, and Jack is a specialist in anti-money laundering compliance positions. I talked to Jack about the intersection of AML compliance and anti-bribery corruption compliance, and how the various financial institutions that he has traditionally served will serve as a basis for expanding out money laundering and anti-money laundering programs in non-financial institutions. The episode comes in at just over 22 minutes. I think that you'll find it very interesting. Thank you very much for listening. Today I'm really thrilled to have with me Jack Kelly. Jack's the Managing Director at the Compliance Search Group. I had a chance to meet with Jack a couple of weeks ago when I was in New York City. I've been a longtime fan of his social media outreach, and I had the chance to learn a little bit about his practice and what he does and how I think it's really about to, frankly, explode into the non-financial area. So, Jack, with that somewhat long-winded introduction, thanks very much for taking the time to visit with me today.
My pleasure, Tom. Thank you for the kind words. So you can keep continuing with that. So that's good. I like that. Yeah, I should just end the conversation on that. But I appreciate it because you're such a thought leader and so well known, well recognized in your space. That seriously that's it really means a lot to me for you to say that, because I think the work you've been doing over the years, on behalf of compliance people, and try to bring that and be an evangelist for that cause is fantastic. And you were doing this before, it became popular, and before people realized what was going on. So I appreciate those kind words, and I appreciate all the hard work you've been doing, all the great work you've been doing.
Well, thanks a lot. For those who don't know, the Compliance Search Group is a professional executive search group. I first became aware of them for his work around AML compliance in the financial industry in New York City, which is where he is home based, or at least the office is based there. And Jack, as I said, has a very interesting social media outreach, a blog and newsletter that we'll get into at the end. But one of the reasons I wanted to sit down and visit with him is because I see the AML compliance practice moving away from simply or primarily financial services into other areas. And I think Jack, as a leader in that area, certainly around talent acquisition, is going to be well suited to help guide many non-financial companies. So with that, Jack, could you tell us what's Compliance Search, how long you've been doing this, who are your clients, and what do you do?
Absolutely, Tom. Yes, we as the name suggests, and I guess maybe it's the name's not terribly creative, or maybe it's kind of ingeniously created. We specialize in compliance, and under that umbrella, it'd be compliance, legal, risk, audit, credit, financial crimes, anti-money laundering, and all kind of related areas. We started. Time goes quickly. About 14 years ago, right? Kind of at the time of after 9/11, and when things were looking pretty scary, obviously, and felt there was an underserved market in this space, and that really felt strongly about this area, and felt that there would be a lot of growth. I never anticipated this much growth, but really felt that the financial area, which is my kind of core specialization, didn't really have enough people in that area, and it kind of always occurred to me it just can't last that way. And fast forward till now, it's just in such huge demand, and in particular in the anti-money laundering area. And then with a lot of the banks, they love, I think capturing now with financial crime and anti-money laundering, and some firms use the terms interchangeably, is an incredibly hot part of compliance, which itself is very hot. And this is an area where what I find out from the people who are in this space are really love what they do, because it's one of these areas where they feel they're making a difference. that they're not just pushing papers, that they're really helping to ensure that terrorists aren't, sending money to, through the banks to do these horrible acts, that, organized crime and drug dealers aren't using banks. So they feel they're not only it's a job, but it's a mission. And for me, it's a pleasure to deal with that because you really get a sense of that it's not a job for them. It's something much more meaningful. And primarily, as you mentioned, we're within the financial space, and that runs the gamut. That could be investment banks, broker-dealers, hedge funds, mutual funds, insurance companies, trading firms, any type of area. And to your point, it's been now growing outside of that area as well, where Fortune 500 companies, all sorts of other organizations realize that they're not immune to it, and that I think they're finding out that they need these people because there's some serious issues going on, and they need to ensure that their company isn't involved, with these kind of activities.
One of the things that you explained to me was increased or real specialization in the AML compliance world. Could you take a few minutes to explain that?
Absolutely. I think what's happening, and this seems to be as the profession of compliance has grown in stature, importance, and responsibility, you don't see the general practitioner anymore, where it's not like the old school doctor who would do everything. Now, in compliance, there's specialization, and in part because with the big banks and the big Wall Street firms and big brokerage firms, the needs are so great, it's hard for, anti-money laundering compliance professional to really know everything. So what ends up happening, you have people who are doing KYC, know your customer, enhanced due diligence, but then they do it in a certain space. So they may do enhanced due diligence, KYC, for the private bank that's dealing with Latin America. They may do KYC, enhanced due diligence for a correspondent bank. And it gets very narrow. Then you might have people who are doing testing and monitoring, people who are doing SARS filings, people who are doing surveillance, people who are doing policies and procedures. And I think the niche aspect of it, for one side, sometimes for candidates, they could feel a little hemmed in. But I think for most, they feel they're developing an expertise in a certain area so they can really understand what they're doing and not spread themselves too thin, so that it's when firms are hiring, they really want professionals who understand a certain area so that the bank doesn't have to worry, hey, we have this person who's covering so much ground and he's not really focusing on one thing, and who knows what could go wrong. So it ends up getting, people who know these silos, if you will, even though that sounds like a bad word that you just kind of hemmed in, but really understanding their space. And I see that's also what's happening, too, is that's where people are making more money as professionals, where because they have a certain intellectual expertise in an area, firms are willing to pay for that. So they'll pay more, for Jane Doe, who really understands, who maybe speaks Spanish and Portuguese, and works at a private bank, if another bank is hiring that because they feel, hey, this person come in day one, they understand the products, they understand the business line, they understand the risks, they speak the language, so, they can read all the documents, which really didn't happen before. There's much more of a laissez-faire attitude 5, 10, 15 years ago. So for now, I think that's a good sign that firms are realizing, hey, we need to really hire and we have to spend money. And even with all this, Tom, I don't think they're even scratching, in my opinion, and I know it sounds self-serving, I don't even think they're scratching the surface. I think when you look what's happening, with Paris, with Beirut, with all these terrorist activities, it's pretty obvious they're using banks to get the money to do this stuff. So I think as hard as everyone's trying, as much money is being put into it, we're still so far from where we have to be to really get our hands around it.
And Jack, that really starts one of the conversations I've been really eager to have with you, which is along the lines of the following. Given the regulated nature of banks, given the enforcement actions against banks regarding money laundering and their response of increased hiring and real specialization, my concern, particularly after Paris, is that many of the bad guys will move to laundering money through other means, other companies, other mechanisms than the financial industry, and it's going to put a large number of U.S. and non-U.S. companies at risk for these same techniques the bad guys are using. And frankly, I don't see most non-financial institutions set up to have a robust anti-money laundering compliance program. As I introduce that topic, what I really wanted to get at is, sitting from your perspective as really someone who has to survey the whole scene, how would you help a non-financial institution think through how they would start a program or how they would acquire talent and really protect themselves both from the reality of that happening and in the inevitable government enforcement?
See, that's a great question, Tom, and it's interesting. You know, being a native New Yorker, being in this space forever, you know, I like to think maybe I'm not terribly naive, but not a day goes by where I don't speak to a compliance person, and let's say in particular with anti-money laundering, where they'll tell me about some scheme, some activity that people are using the banks to try to do bad stuff, and it blows my mind. I'll sit back and say, it just never occurred to me. It never dawned on me. So right. I think one of the things not only the banks and Wall Street financial industry is doing, but I think outside of it is really have to kind of realize any way these people could try to funnel money through an entity to achieve their goals, they're going to do it.
Right.
It's kind of frightening because that's all that's their livelihood, to figure out how we can get this money and how can we game the system and how can we use it to that ultimate bad goal. And I think as companies, they have to they can't take for granted it's not going to happen. They can't say, oh, not us. They can't say, hey, this is not our problem, because hearing them talk about it any way, any loophole, any little crack, Tom, they find a way to exploit it for their own gains. And I think with outside of Wall Street and outside of banking, there's so many ways. I mean, just as a random non-compliance guy observation I see here in New York is that with these big luxury buildings they're building, and you start to see who's buying them, I don't know who's watching to see where is this money coming from.
Absolutely.
Are the countries they're coming from, the flow of the money, and it's probably one of those things where maybe they don't want to know because they want to sell that $20 million, $50 million, literally $20 million, $50 million, $100 million penthouse, so they're looking the other way, or they really, like me, sitting speaking to a compliance guy, not even realize, oh my God, this is possible, because sometimes it's so unbelievable to think, what they're doing, that sometimes you can't really comprehend, oh my God, this is what's really going on. So I think with any organization, they really have to take a hard look at, hey, what business are we in, and how can people exploit this, to try to take advantage of folks.
Right. So if a company wanted to and that was certainly reported, I thought, quite thoroughly in the New York Times, but how would you help a new client find someone to run an AML program? Or if I'm a AML compliance practitioner in a bank, how do I try to market myself outside the financial industry? Is that even possible yet?
Oh, sure. So for companies who are looking to, hire, compliance professionals of anti-money laundering, even with all the hiring over the last number of years, there's still more of a demand than people are out there. So for people who are in the profession, that's good news, because there are a lot of opportunities. There's more money. There's more jobs. For people hiring, it's a little challenging because you're competing with so many folks. However, these professionals are looking for interesting, challenging opportunities. It's no secret that on Wall Street it's been tough. Even though for compliance specifically it's been going pretty well, a lot of the banks, a lot of the brokerage firms, a lot of, just they're not doing as well as they have. And it filters down where people aren't having as much fun, not enjoying it, a little worried about what's going to happen with their companies, and looking for other ways to take their core experience and move into other areas. There's a big, I speak to people every day, and there's a real interest in going to, taking their skills and moving into other types of areas, whether it's technology, whether it's big pharma, whether it's, big corporations, whatever the case may be, to kind of apply it there. And I think there's a pool of talent for those others to tap into. And then once they have the experience and background, whether it's anti-money laundering, enhanced due diligence, surveillance, SARS filing, a lot of that substance is transferable and can kind of move over to those other organizations.
Jack, if I could now, I'd like to turn to something that I certainly think might be a little bit more fun, which is the Compliance X. Compliance Exchange, your blog, your
Right.
social media outreach. You send out a newsletter that I think is, I think yesterday's or the day before, where I think the headline was, "Is Hillary anti-Wall Street?" Certainly got everyone's attention. And then you went on in the body of the text to say, "No, I just wanted to get your attention." So you clearly have to fund
Hillary, right, does Hillary hate, bankers more than terrorists? So, I had to put a disclaimer because, Tom, you get a lot of people who, we're living in a very partisan world. I don't care either way about,
right.
I just try to report stuff, but, people take it really seriously. So I put that asterisk in because I was just waiting for people to jump all over me. What are you doing? How dare you? But we tried, with the newsletter, and it all started during, the financial crisis, where I had that moment of, oh my God, what am I going to do? If this doesn't turn around, I got to get a real job, and I can't sit in this nice, comfortable office. What am I going to do? And I've always followed the news, so started blogging, writing articles, and then organically, it just grew. Now it goes out to about 110,000 people worldwide every day, about 4 o'clock or so, and we try to cover the news, what's going on in the world, compliance, and then also I feel for our audience, just to give a big sense. It's hard to me personally to feel that just knowing compliance is enough, because if you just look at compliance in a vacuum, that doesn't help. You need to know what's going on in the political arena. You need to go what's going on in the business climate. What it has to do with the stock market and bond markets. You want to know what's happening geopolitically. So I think for profession, in my opinion, and maybe I take it from the recruiting side, so I'm always looking at people's career development, so that I think to be a successful professional, you need to know what's surrounding, what's going on, what are the issues, because then that framework, you could better understand what's happening and why things are happening. So I think, that's kind of the message we want to get across, to give these, give professionals, yes, understanding compliance and regulations, but all the surrounding stuff. But I'm trying to make it in a fun, enjoyable way, because for whatever reason, most time when people write about compliance, they feel the need to make it really dry and really kind of boring. And to me, it's anything but. I mean, half the time, Tom, when I'm writing something, and it's like unbelievable. It's hard to believe. Just the other day, I'm writing about this, potential $6 billion fine, criminal charges for 5 big banks. It's crazy. Like, and no one cares. You're right. This is such a huge thing, and it's, met with a big yawn. Whatever. So it's really important material, but I try to put it in a way that people could enjoy reading it, and not only compliance people. There's a lot of people who are in compliance to read it, because it's making it user-friendly for them to kind of understand what's going on and to feel comfortable with the space.
Well, I think you've certainly accomplished that. So have there been any blog posts that you've been particularly proud of, ones that maybe stand out, or maybe ones that drew the most downloads or comments? Maybe top 2 or 3?
It's so interesting. This is still a learning exercise for me, because it's still now a labor of love to do this, where our core business is the recruiting, and sometimes we'll put out some really, I think, meaningful, insightful, intelligent pieces, and it doesn't really, it's like, whatever. Then, you have something that's a little kind of edgy, a little bit that you think, all right, they're going to think I'm being silly for writing this, and boom, off the charts. People love it. And it always gives me such a treat where, you get some, very experienced compliance person who's doing it forever, been everywhere, seen everything, and they look at it and they just love looking at the pictures, looking at the GIFs we have that are funny, and just love some of the articles about whether it's a hedge fund guy who, I think we're running it today, who faked his own death because he didn't want to give money back, and spent it on, I'm not kidding, on karaoke and other things. It's just so over the top what happens. So to me, the material is so rich to put out there. So I guess the best part I have is these really wild stories where, in a way, it's not good in the sense that people are being, losing money on these things, but it's just so amazing that if you see it in a TV show or in a movie, you'd say, this is so silly. This doesn't work. This can't happen. And it's happening.
Right.
Literally, almost every day it's happening, which is mind-boggling, and nothing changes. And that's what's the craziest thing. It's not. It's like every day. When I first started doing the blog and newsletter, I was worried, and people say, Jack, what are you going to write about every day? What are you going to cover? And I was kind of believing and saying, oh, yeah, maybe you're right, but, like, let me try. And not a day goes by where, there's just not at least one or two articles where you look and say, oh, my God, I can't believe this is happening. This is crazy. This is ridiculous. So there's not a lack for that. So that's where I think the most enjoyment. Well, also, I think what I really love doing is I feel people, the average person you're dealing with, they're so busy. Their time is so limited. They're dealing with very high-stress jobs, high-pressure jobs. If you're in a place like New York, Boston, San Francisco, L.A., you're doing huge commutes into, you're taking an hour and a half commute in, an hour and a half back. Maybe, you have a family, you have a spouse, you have kids, and you're just so pressed for time. So if I could find a way to communicate with them and help them with their careers and help them navigate their careers and help them really be informed, that gives me a lot of pleasure, where I realize, hey, they have a very tight window, but they really want to find information. They're hungry for information, which is great to see in this space.
Right.
Which is, I think, for yourself, and you probably see it all the time too, where people don't take for granted what they do. They really appreciate what they do, and they really want to learn, and they want to advance, and they want to stay current. So to be able to help them with that I get a lot of satisfaction from it.
Jack, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time, but
okay.
I really hope we can continue this conversation because, as I said when I met with you at your office, I really see the role you have as expanding greatly, frankly, as more non-financial institutions need the talent and services that you provide. But also, one of the themes that I try to evangelize on is everyone's a part of the solution. And in the compliance world, you're a part of the solution. And you're help providing companies, banks, financial institutions, and perhaps, hopefully, for both of us, others in the future, a wide variety of talent that they might not have access to or might not even know how to go through the process of acquiring that talent. So for that reason, I hope to continue the conversation. And if something pops up in the AML world that you think you'd like to talk about, please let me know.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
All right.
Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox again. I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. If you have any questions, please email them to me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. I'm preparing my next mailbag episode. Also, if you would rate this podcast in iTunes, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much, and I look forward to visiting with you again.